Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to JMA Friday. We're going to have a look at the month ahead with Japanese and CFS beta models. This takes us into the end of January. And of course it's the last JMA Friday of 2016 as well. So we're going to go more or less through the second month of the winter of 2016-2017 with this update. We'll look at the JMA first, then we'll have a look at the CFS V2. Later on, we'll have a look at the prospect of cold weather as go through the first couple of weeks of January, so that'll be with you this afternoon, having a look at the EWF and GFS models to see what they're showing in terms of the potential for some colder conditions through the first week or two of January. And of course, we'll see whether the Japanese and CFS models are agreeing with this idea of things turning colder through January as well. So, before I get on with that, just say about the ads. There's links to articles or pages. Have a browse through widgets and click through links. If there's any articles that you have to pay for our website. And a big thank you to everybody for doing that. So, we'll start off with the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts from the Japanese model. For the next week to 10 days. The British Isles is just here. Actually, this is for the next week. It's going to take us from the 30th of December through to the 6th of January. So these charts, blue is extrapolating to low pressure, and yellow, orange, red, they extrapolate to high pressure. So for the coming week, we find that we've got quite a deep trough up to the northeast of the country, over Scandinavia and down into west parts of Russia. That contains a lot of cold air. And then we've got this ridge that's out to the west of the country just here and trying to get up towards Greenland. It means that the flow is going rather like that, and we are trying to pull in colder air. So we're going to get a bit of a cold snap over New Year, then it's going to turn a bit milder through to the middle part of next week, and then colder again at the end of next week with winds going into the north. Now, this is how week 2 is looking. This is the 6th through to the 13th of January. This all looks rather odd, really. I think the model might have lost the plot a little bit with this. We've certainly got some above average heights here over top of the poles, so that's indicating some blocking there. But then we've got all of these below average heights through the UK and also extending down to the south. It's a very bizarre looking chart. It's quite hard to work out what the jet stream would be doing with something like that, but I assume the jet stream is on a bit of a southerly track, perhaps doing something a bit like that. I'm not sure what the model is seeing there through that week, and this is the week that we're looking at, of course, second week of January. The week we're looking at to perhaps get some very significantly colder weather if we back the winds into the east. Certainly that height anomaly isn't seeing that, but the jet stream's on a bit of a southerly track there. It looks unsettled, and I would have thought it looks quite cold, but it's very hard to interpret exactly what the model is doing there through that second week of January. I think it's picking up on something, but it probably doesn't know what to do with the signals that it's picking up on. The most definitive signal is this area of yellow up here, which looks like it's northern blocking, so everything should be shifted southwards with that high pressure up there, really. And then we go through to weeks 3 and 4, which is the 13th through 27th of January. This one has northern blocking as well. It's extending it through Greenland and going over towards the north of Scandinavia, towards Svalbard. And then we've got this trough of low pressure underneath it. Now, this just isn't quite right to be producing a very cold spell. What we would need to do, the trough is just centred to our west, so it is an Atlantic influence, albeit with the jet again on a southerly track. So it's quite cool. There would be wintry potential. But if we was to shove this trough here eastwards and centre it somewhere through central parts of Europe, so we'd have the trough there with the high pressure up here, the blocking, we will then really entrench cold air down from the north. Isn't quite right, but it is fairly cool and unsettled, most certainly. I think overall the JMA is seeing quite a coldish month ahead for January. Let's have a look at the temperature and precipitation anomaly. So we start off with the coming week again. This is taking us from the 30th of December through to the 6th of January. This is when we've got the heights centred out to the west-northwest of us, and the trough is up to the northeast and the east. British Isles just here, by the way, in the top right-hand corner of the chart as you are looking at it. The temperature, the precipitation, I should say, anomaly is coming out average to drier than average. Looks like a fairly dry end to the year and start to 2017. The temperature anomaly is coming out significantly colder than average for the south, nearer normal up to the north. So for the coming week, it is seeing quite a cold week ahead. We go through to week 2, which is the 6th through to 13th of January, and that's when you have that rather bizarre looking chart with lots of low pressure coming through the UK and extending into Europe as well. I think the jet stream is on a southerly track, and we know we've got some northern blocking up here. You can't see the polar region on this view, but we've already looked at that, and we know there is northern blocking there for that week 2 period. It's a much more unsettled week, so precipitation is going above average. Quite an unsettled week, certainly there, second week of December. The temperature anomaly is lifting that back closer to average, but it's still a little bit cold on average for the south, and many parts of Europe are still coming out colder than average as well. So, again, I think it has lost the plot a little bit there through that second week of January. I'm not sure quite what it's seeing. It looks a fairly coldish week and unsettled, so there is wintry potential. But I think in terms of the pressure distribution, it hasn't really got a handle on what it's doing there. And then we go through to weeks 3 and 4, which is the 13th through 27th of January. The trough is centred just to our west. We know we've also got quite a lot of northern blocking going on up here across Greenland and going to the north of Scandinavia. The precipitation anomaly is still coming out rather significantly above average, so it is seeing an unsettled January. And the temperature anomaly, because the flow is actually coming in from the Atlantic, because the trough is centred just west of Ireland, despite all the northern blocking, we actually come out milder than average through that final 2-weekly period. I'm not sure about that one either. I've got a feeling the JMA has gone off on a little bit of a tangent with its ideas this week, and I'm not sure it's really got a handle on what it's doing through particularly weeks 2, 3 and 4 of January. Let's have a look at CFS V2. This is the 500 millibar height anomaly, again broken down into week periods. This is week 1, taking us from the 30th of December through to the 5th of January. Above average heights being centred out to our west and northwest. There's that cold trough extending through Scandinavia, which will be pushing down into northeastern parts of Europe as well. Also low pressure to the south of this ridge, so implies the jet stream is getting onto a bit of a southerly track, and the flow is doing something a bit like that. Again, very complicated looking charts. And we know that for a period, this is correct, we're going to have high pressure just to our west through the middle part of next week. But we get a northerly over New Year, we get a northerly at the end of next week. So again, I'm not sure that the model really is placing all the troughs and ridges quite correctly there, even as early as week 1. Now, week 2, which is the 6th through to the 12th of January, we've got this very cold trough through Scandinavia extending down into Central Europe. We've got blocking up to the north, just here over top of the pole. Also hints of a bit of a ridge out to the west of us. Again, it's a rather complicated chart, but I think it's doing something like that with jet stream. It's not a million miles away from what the JMA is seeing, actually. But again, it all looks rather strange, and I'm not sure, because we're going into this more blocked period, and possibly quite cold period through the early part of January. I've got a feeling these long-range models are sort of struggling to get a feel for what the actual weather pattern is going to be doing. But that does look quite cold and unsettled, certainly the Scandinavia and many central parts of Europe. Week 3, which is the 13th through to the 19th of January, also looking very blocked, lots of red there up to the north, high pressure around Greenland, even extending into the Arctic. Got this low pressure, the trough is out to the southwest of us and over eastern parts of Europe. Again, it's a rather bizarre looking chart, but I would have thought the winds are probably coming in from an easterly direction, if anything, with that one. And then week 4, which is the 20th through to the 26th of January, we're losing the blocking signal then, and things are just looking like they're reverting to more of a westerly type setup. So that's quite definitively going back into the Atlantic. So week 4, towards the end of January, probably turns things milder and more unsettled. Let's see what the temperature anomalies are doing. The coming week looks warmer than average for the north, and average temperatures for the south. Notice over here, many central parts of Europe come out colder than average. Week 2 looks a little bit colder than average for the south, nearer normal further to the north. Week 3, temperature anomalies go from the 13th to the 19th of January. This looks really quite cold through most parts of the country, actually, and many parts of Europe, again, having quite a cold week there. Overall, I think the CFS with the JMA are both hinting at quite a cold January, certainly for Europe. They're just not sure on the exact pattern, how it develops, and whether that cold really backs into the west of Europe at this stage. And then week 4 with the CFS, that goes milder than average then, from the 20th to 26th. That's as the westerlies are starting to break through once again. Precipitation for the coming week, we are drier than average, so a fairly dry week on the way from the 30th of September to the 5th of January. Week 2 is also looking drier than average. That's in a bit of a disagreement with the JMA because it turns things more unsettled there through that week. And then weeks 3 and 4, we start to lose the signal, so it just goes to average precipitation then in week 3. And week 4, fairly weak signal, but it is a little bit wetter than average for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Again, that's as the winds are going into west. It's a rather complicated update from JMA Friday today. I don't think the Japanese or the CFS models have got the actual weather patterns truly sorted out through January. They are both hinting at the chance of quite a cold month for Europe, and they're just unsure about the exact setup between the troughs and the ridges and whether that backs into the west of Europe or not. But it's certainly an interesting update. There are suggestions between both of these models, but we've got a lot of northern blocking going on, and it's just whether things lock in exactly as they need to really pull that cold air out into the western part of Europe. It's certainly going to be there for Scandinavia, certainly going to be there for northeast Europe. Many central parts of Europe and eastern Europe will be having some cold weather, some very cold weather perhaps during January. Will that back into the west? They're a bit uncertain, but the hints are there, certainly, that you're going to get some quite cold weather even into the west of Europe. I think particularly through the early and middle part of January, they may be going more westerly and milder towards the end of the month. And talking of the cold weather, we're going to have a look later on this afternoon at the GFS and ECWF models for the next week to 10 days and see what the very latest is on these cold prospects during early January. So that's the last JMA Friday of the year. It'll be back next week when we'll be into 2017, of course. So I'll see you then if you want to watch JMA Friday next week in the new year. Come back later on for that second update. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.